In the premiere of Cole's Corner, roses are red, violets are blue. Divorces can be civil or they can be ugly too. How Tom Brady's departure from New England may have a tremendous impact on the upcoming draft even a year later. What's under that genius hood of Bill Belichick in 2021? Plus, a New England media personality weighs in and takes us through his journey in the Boston sports scene.
Yeah! Ooh!
Hello and welcome into Cole's Corner for the first episode, fresh and steamy, leading right into the 2021 NFL Draft that I couldn't be any more excited for. You know, I'll be watching. I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of mystery surrounding what orders the 5 prominent quarterbacks will be drafted, who's going to stay where they are, who's going to draft down, draft up, who's going to pull that first trigger. It's a whole lot of hootenanny that I'll be dropping on Thursday. And that leads me into my first topic. I'm sitting here all by myself in an empty townhouse in Arizona, and I'm thinking, have you ever met a married couple that had a harsh separation? You know, they're in love. Nothing can come between them. Everything just seems to fall into place after a weird, strange encounter that got them to kick things off in the first place. They fall in love quickly, and it's Cupid hearts surrounding in every which direction. They're a big fan favorite. The families and friends love them. Some people look up to their relationship. They're winning. But then they suddenly get divorced and everyone is shocked. Turns out things weren't always so cordial. Now, you have several different outcomes after a divorce. There's the civil ones. The one where it ends mutually. There may be a kid involved and you do your best to be peaceful, and it works out that actually it might work better as friends that's sharing a child, and it works well. I know a few couples that work that way. It's not uncommon. This is the friendly divorce, a civil, happy-go-lucky separation eventually. This is one you'll see on Disney Channel. Then there's the ugly divorce, ugly divorce. Never-ending cycle, on and off again. Then it really clicks in that, yeah, this isn't going to work. But now they take it out on each other instead of mutually separating. It gets nasty. Lawsuits are involved. They turn children, families, friends against one another. And it has a lasting impact on everyone involved. They never speak again, or when they do, it's not pretty. This is the hateful divorce. The one you've seen in action thriller where the ex-husband stalks and tries to kill the ex-wife kind of stuff. Kind of morbid, but you get my point. And then there's the divorce that ends in shambles, big fight, explosive words. Neither can really recover. They turn, put their heads down. They're out of there. Don't look back. Just not enough left in the tank to fight anymore. But then, you know, maybe years later, they come across each other's paths again. They maybe pick up where they left off, spark another flame after some needed time off. They're still both available because neither never really truly moved on. Or even they just become friends and act as if they were never married. All is good. All is cool. This is the Parent Trap effect. The movie, Parent Trap, knockout, blowout fight. Wife throws a blow dryer at the guy's head. They walk out, don't turn back until their twins meet up at a camp and bring them together again. They fall in love again, happily ever after, right? You know, a lot of people call Tom Brady's departure from New England to Tampa Bay a divorce between Tom and Bill Belichick. People just assume it's nasty, and Tom and Bill will never speak again, and Bill doesn't respect Tom for leaving, blah, blah, blah. We got to pump the brakes. Was it a divorce? I guess you can call it that, but I don't think it's an ugly one. If anything, it's the Parent Trap divorce. These guys don't hate each other, nor will they ever. In fact, when it's all said and done, there's another Last Dance documentary, but the Patriots version in 20 years from now. They'll laugh it off, be like father, son, looking back at all the good they did. Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson never got along all the time. It wasn't 100% go lucky. They just won championships, and now 20 years later, they look back, they're cool. As Bill and Tom will be. They'll look back, all the history they made in the National Football League. You cannot write the story of the NFL without Brady and Belichick working in tandem together in a cold, snowy playoff game at Gillette Stadium in January. You can't do it. They're both the leading parts in each other's story. Brady doesn't win 6 rings without Belichick. Belichick doesn't win 6 rings without Brady. They go hand in hand. This wasn't an ugly divorce. This was a time to move on moment. They did their time. They had their fun. Brady had to spread his wings and go be fun fun time in sunny Florida. Prove he could succeed without Bill. That's it. It happens. It happens in marriages, friendships, business partnerships. With that being said, you might ask, so why didn't they just ride it out together if they don't hate each other? Because in every relationship, good or bad, there's one nagging thing, one topic that lingers or wafts no matter how good or bad it's going. It may come up, it may not, but it's still there. For Tom and Bill, it was the Jimmy Garoppolo situation in 2017. Bill wanted Jimmy G to be the next man up because he thought Tom was running out. Time was running out on Tom. It was a logical idea. Tom was going on 4 years old. You think he thought he would go win another title at 42? Absolutely not. It was one of those innocent crushes that turned hostile. You know, the jokingly coined term work husband or work wife. Well, Bill fell too far from Jimmy G, the work companion, and it got in the way of Tom's trust. So Tom goes to Florida. Not only goes to Florida, but he wins with Gronk alongside of him. Bill is left freezing in New England with a beaten down Cam Newton as his quarterback and a defense who had 7 starters opt out of the season. It was hopeless. And you know what? They still won 7 games and were a play away from 8-8. The 2020 season showed us just how a divorce can go in several directions. Tom goes off and succeeds. Tom is the one in the relationship who picks himself back up, shrugs it off, makes a new life for himself with a new family, a white picket fence, and a dog. Bill may have taken a bit longer to get over it, but he didn't really have a choice. He had to build something from the ground up when Tom left. May have struggled with seeing Tom run off, as expected, but Bill isn't going to be the guy who throws everything away and drinks himself to sleep for a year and loses his job. Bill's going to fight. Bill's going to make it right for himself and for the organization. And we saw that immediately after this season. He goes out and gets a couple of tight ends. He took accountability. He said, the tight ends we drafted the year before didn't work out. We got to go make it right. Tighten some screws in places of need, and he'll have his defense back next year. This draft on Thursday will tell us just how much fight Bill Belichick has when he could potentially move up and get another quarterback. Not to take no for an answer, not let Tom run away with what people will say is the winning divorce. He will even up with Tom, so someday they can be the Parent Trap couple who shake it off and come together again when nobody can say there was a winner or a loser. Instead of laying down, taking a beating, and turning into the ugly divorce where angst and jealousy take over. A trade up for Mac Jones, a trade up for Trey Lance could solve it. Or even a little trade back magic that lands him the guy he had to send away just to mend his relationship with Tom a couple years ago. His work crushed Jimmy. Stay tuned on Thursday. This is going to be big. The divorce, is it a divorce? Who knows? But there's going to be a lot on the plate for the New England Patriots on the draft Thursday, something we haven't seen, a team that hasn't drafted a quarterback since 1993 in the first round. And with that, I'm going to bring on a guy who's all too familiar with the Brady Belichick separation and his time as the sports director at WPRI in Providence, Rhode Island. You know, he's covered the World Series multiple times, Super Bowl multiple times, and it's the one and only Yianni Kourakis. And as I might mention, he was my boss, sort of. I interned for him over the summer, man. How's it going?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that seems like forever ago, and it seems like just yesterday. But the world is in a better place today than it was that summer. But Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Looking handsome as always. No, yeah, it was weird last year, of course, because obviously we couldn't get in and get into the stadium and stuff like we normally would be able to. But so let's start off with this, man. You know, one of the biggest questions going into the draft on Thursday night is the Patriots. A lot of people don't know what's happening with that, and we could have breaking news before we even get done with this thing because, you know, reports are saying New England and Carolina have made groundwork on a possible trade for that 8th pick. So let me ask you, do they pull the trigger? If so, they'll likely have a choice of 2 guys, whoever San Francisco doesn't take, or Justin Fields. So who are you going with at this moment?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting scenario for the Patriots because historically, when they were winning Super Bowls or getting far, they were picking late 20s, 30, 31, 32. So now for them to be at 15 and to need a quarterback, there's a lot of different options at play. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. I mean, just yesterday you had, reputable national people with conflicting reports, like Todd McShay saying they're going to move back Then you have his colleague Mel Kiper saying they're going to move up. Tom Pelissero on NFL Network saying they're going to move up. So I think Belichick probably is reveling in the fact that no one knows what he's going to do. Obviously, everyone knows the Patriots need a quarterback. They stocked the roster through free agency this year. So how good does Belichick feel about Cam Newton week one? Probably better than last year, but still not great. So they're obviously going to make a move in some capacity, whether that's through the draft or somehow getting Jimmy Garoppolo. I think if the Niners don't take Mac Jones and he sort of is falling, maybe he falls into their lap at 15, or maybe they move up a few spots to get Mac Jones. If they're intrigued by Justin Fields and they can get to Detroit or Carolina's spot, and that's with the Niners not taking him and he's still there, I can see that. But I don't know who the Patriots prefer, Mac Jones or Justin Fields. And I actually would be surprised if they did move up. Historically, while Belichick makes a ton of draft day trades, he's made one every year except 1 year in his 20-plus years in New England. He generally doesn't move into that top 10, top 15 because you usually have to give up a lot. And they don't have the trade pieces to do that because they're back so far. But for a guy that's never drafted a quarterback in the first round, is this year, I don't know. There's no blueprint for him ever moving up and gambling and getting that quarterback. So I'd be surprised if he moves up. I don't think they take a guy. I only think they take a QB in the first round if Mac Jones falls to them at 15. Otherwise, I think they stay pat and draft the best player available.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You said something you brought up that I was going to come to at some point. Do they stick down? Do they trade down? And do they trade and get do they bring Jimmy Garoppolo back? That's something that I wanted to bring up to you. So, like, if you look at it, you have these 5 top quarterbacks that are going to be drafted probably in the top 10. So you mean whoever San Francisco doesn't take, the top 3 are a lock. Atlanta's a wild card. Who knows if they're going to stick with Matt Ryan or not? They could get one if they want. Cincinnati has Burrow. Miami's probably sticking with Tua. But once you go down the list, it's Dallas, no. Giants, no. Philadelphia, probably not. So it's Denver. So, if they want to make this move, they could. But do they roll the dice and see if one of those guys falls to 15? Or do you think it would be a good idea and try to bring Jimmy back?
I think it depends how much Bill Belichick still loves Jimmy Garoppolo. He clearly liked him a lot when he was here. I don't think really wanted to trade him in the first place. There were some different things at play there with keeping Brady along and Kraft and Brady's relationship. But Garoppolo has shown to be injury prone dating back to his New England days and is still making $25 million a year and has a no trade clause. So I think if it's only a 2, if the Pats can give up a 2, next year's 2 would be preferable. Even this year's 2 would be fine with. To get Jimmy G and then you still pick at 15, I think that would work. You have to make the money work somehow. But at this point, Bill Belichick's just had a birthday. I want to say he's 69. He loads up in free agency. If he doesn't want to do the long plan, very long with a rookie quarterback, and do sort of the short and intermediate plan with someone he knows and Jimmy Garoppolo, then I think he's probably more comfortable doing that. So if I'm a Patriot fan, I'd be happy with Jimmy for a 2, and then you stay at 15, and then you hope he stays injury-free, and he knows your system. He's worked with Josh McDaniels. He's been here. So I'd be happy with that if I was a Patriot fan. And you have to look at the numbers. 5 quarterbacks projecting the top 10, 2 or 3 aren't going to make it. They're going to be bust. That's just historically what the numbers tell us. So who those are, we don't know. Obviously, that's the big guessing game.
Exactly. That's what makes Thursday night so interesting, because you don't know who's going to be a bust, who's going to play out. But something I do have to ask you. So now I do have your perspective on Jimmy Garoppolo. Now take me back to 2017 when that whole thing blew up. Bill wants Jimmy. Brady pushed back. Kraft basically forces Belichick to trade him. So a lot of people say that was a lingering thing that happened in New England in the final days of Tom Brady and why he left. A lot of people called it a divorce. I don't know what you want to call it. But do you think this draft in particular, after the year that New England had last year, do you think this is a draft where Bill Belichick is, I'm evening up, I'm getting even with Tom Brady? Is that something that you think, or what are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people
Oh,
think he
I mean,
is.
we talked a lot about that during the Super Bowl for obvious reasons as Brady got there and won. Yeah, I think the competitive nature in Bill Belichick, after having to hear for 2 weeks Brady winning one without him and him having not won one without Brady, yeah, I think we saw his day one spending in free agency. Bill Belichick doesn't tolerate 7 and 9 seasons, and there was some excuse making this year about, we sold out with the salary cap. They had a lot of dead money. Obviously, Cam had COVID. He was their quarterback. They didn't get him until July. But yeah, the Patriots need to shore up the quarterback position. The first part of your question, dating back to 2017, we didn't know why Garoppolo wasn't traded that previous offseason, because that's when they would have got more bang for their buck. They traded Jacoby Brissett. They kept Garoppolo. And then they really didn't have much leverage. And on Halloween of 2017, he sort of just calls up Kyle Shanahan and says, hey, what do you want for Jimmy? A 2? Okay, fine. He's going your way. He sort of just delivered him out to San Francisco. So the timing and the package at that point was really surprising. And then he did well his first year with San Francisco, ended up going to a Super Bowl. So I think everything Bill Belichick's history at the time would have told you he'd rather have Garoppolo than Brady, because he always gets out on guys a year early or 2 rather than late. Tom Brady turns out to be a unicorn and wins Super Bowls at 43. So it ended up being the right decision to keep Brady, right? They went to the Super Bowl after the trade against the Eagles, lost, and then won with the Rams. But we don't know for sure about did Kraft veto a Brady, make him trade Garoppolo? There was the Seth Wickersham ESPN report about, Brady wasn't happy about Garoppolo there. Turns out drafting Garoppolo in 2014 was the best thing to motivate Brady, because he had some of his best seasons ever and won 3 Super Bowls after they drafted Garoppolo. So just part of those two's history. But it's interesting because if you want to go really far back, in Cleveland, Belichick got rid of Bernie Kosar, who was their big quarterback. And, reportedly, or the story goes, in the year 2001 that the Patriots won the Super Bowl, he would have been, if he had the leverage, or if he had more of not more of a say, but he was coming off one losing season in New England. He knew Brady was a better quarterback than Drew Bledsoe, even though he was a 4th stringer a year prior. But Bledsoe had just signed a $100 million deal and was the face of the franchise. So Belichick has a sort of a weird history with the quarterback position. Obviously, the 20 years with Brady were exceptional. But if you go back to Cleveland, sort of the situation transitioning to Brady and then out, he's not a lot of these coaches and OCs or quarterback whisperers and such. I don't want to say he doesn't value the position, but he's never been someone seemingly who is a slave to the quarterback position in roster building.
Let's just get into your journey in your job here at WPRI and just through your days. Kind of walk me through how you got your position and what your journey was leading up to that, and just what your favorite part of walking into the station every day, knowing you're covering some of the most historic, franchises in sports.
Yeah, so I've been here at WPRI for coming up on 8 years. My first job out of college was in Salisbury, Maryland. Similar to you, go to a small market, put in a couple years, move up. I was in Richmond, Virginia for 3 years. Covered a lot of college football, college hoops, some NASCAR, high school football, etc. And then got here in 2013. And my first month on the job, I covered the 2013 Red Sox World Series that they won. So, and then from there, as luck would have it, anyone who's covered New England sports in the last 20 years has had extreme luck, because if not every year, the next year you're covering a championship. So in my case, I've covered 4 Super Bowls, 2 World Series, Stanley Cup final, Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals a few years, playoffs every year. So it's been an embarrassment of riches. It's been awesome. There's nothing better than covering teams that are making championship runs. And in the Patriots case, they were so good for so long. We would joke that their season didn't start to the AFC Championship because they'd get a bye. They would beat someone. They'd beat the winner of the, wild card game of whomever, and then roll in the divisional round. And then the AFC Championship, they'd either have Peyton Manning or Ben Roethlisberger or a formidable opponent. But that's really when the season started. So while you're going through it, I don't want to say you're spoiled by it, but like now after covering a year in which they were 7-9, I'm like, man, I miss them being great because we were there like every other team in week 13, 14. Can they make the playoffs? They need 8 teams to lose. They need to win 3 or 4 and no ties, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, they've fallen off hard from all those years. So, yeah, I mean, covering those events is like nothing. The Super Bowl is the biggest spectacle in sports. And when you're there, it's different than everything else. It's so massive. It's so big. And in our case, we've been there for 7, 8, 9 days, and you're talking about the game for so long. And then you realize at kickoff in 3 hours, 3.5 hours, all the stuff we were talking about didn't matter. Like it's a game between 2 teams. And in, the Malcolm Butler interception, the Seahawks, that was my first Super Bowl I ever covered. So the change of emotions down the stretch of that game, the Pats are down 10 in the fourth quarter. Julian Edelman has that huge catch where he's concussed by Cam Chancellor, gets up, gets a first down. They end up scoring twice. And then back come the Seahawks. Jermaine Kearse has this crazy bobbling acrobatic catch that puts him inside the 20. And then really it's like, all right, they're going to run it out with Marshawn Lynch and win the Super Bowl. And then obviously everyone knows inexplicably Russell Wilson throws the ball. Malcolm Butler, who is an undrafted rookie free agent with the interception. So like that, from my perspective, that was unbelievable because, I mean, as a backdrop, I'm obviously a New England Patriots fan because I grew up here. So obviously I put on my work hat and cover it pretty fairly, but I'm a Patriot fan at heart. So for all these Super Bowls, and this includes a 28-3 comeback with the Falcons, we have to prepare for going on air right after the game ends on the field or wherever and doing a post-game show. So obviously our production and plan for how that show is going to look changes hugely based on if the Pats win or lose. So I'm thinking the Pats are going to win, and then they get down to the 1, they're going to lose. I remember Roger Goodell walking by with the Vince Lombardi trophy, and just like it was all a blur. Like, there it goes. That could have been the Pats. You have to remember in 2014, that was a big drought for the Patriots, and by drought, 9 seasons without a Super Bowl. So they won in 3 and 4, 1, 3 and 4, and now it's 14, and they had lost twice to your Giants. You're a Giants fan, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
This would have been 3 straight losses. And at that point, you're almost like, geez, are they ever going to do this again? So even though 28-3 was obviously historic, I always say the Seahawks Super Bowl is my favorite just because there was more at stake. And those teams, I think the Seahawks, that 2014 Seahawks team coming off a Super Bowl win a blowout win over the Broncos the year before, was maybe the best opponent. Russell Wilson wasn't the player then he is now, but that defense was absurd. Marshawn Lynch was unbelievable. So I'm just sort of rambling on here. But yeah, the Falcons Super Bowl obviously was crazy for similar reasons. All right, they're getting wiped out. Let's do this post-game show. They lost. I'm preparing everything, all these nuggets and anecdotes and scripts. And we have a camera ready in the post-game losing media section. And then they start coming back. I'm like, maybe we should reroute and try to get onto the field, because it's like, all right, maybe we had 20, 30 minutes to get sound during the post-game show prior to being on the field for it. And then it was like, no, because if they win, obviously the team celebrates on the field. So we're it's fourth quarter, they're going to win, they're going to lose. It was just me and my photographer at the time. And then obviously once they went to overtime with the Falcons, you knew they were going to win. And I remember standing there watching it. The bad thing about covering the Super Bowl for TV people, I say bad thing because, nothing's really bad about it. You're waiting in this huge line in the bowels of the stadium to get onto the field. So the last 2 minutes of a game, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and the Pats always have close games. Even the Eagles one came down to a Hail Mary the last play. You're watching it on a TV, as you would if you were in like a restaurant and there's like a 30-inch TV up on the wall.
Mhm.
So I remember watching it, and Randy Moss, who was there for ESPN, was just standing next to me, and I was like, I wonder if he's nervous. He's Randy Moss. He never won a Super Bowl. He lost against the Giants in 2007. But and I could see through the tunnel the teams playing, but you can't really make out what's going on. But the cheers are, 15 seconds ahead of the TV because of the tape delay. So, those are pretty cool. And the Rams, the Rams Super Bowl, the last one, wasn't a great game. It wasn't entertaining. 1 touchdown total. I think it was 13-3, but still pretty cool.
Yeah, so kind of based off what you're talking about with the Atlanta game and having to change everything afterwards, thinking, or even the Seattle game. Say you're talking to a young person going in the media, especially with someone like you who has a Patriots bias, when you have to turn it around that quickly post game. What's your best advice into how, you're flipping a 28-3 loss into an unbelievable best comeback ever in the Super Bowl overtime win? Like how are you doing that in that short amount of time? What's your best?
I mean, you sort of have to be prepared for both scenarios. So during the game, obviously I'm watching it intently, and going into the game, you have, a million notes. All right. If they, obviously big, easy ones, this would be Tom Brady's 5th Super Bowl, Belichick's 5th Super Bowl. He passes, the Patriots tie the Steelers for most Super Bowls, or Tom Brady passes his boyhood idol, Joe Montana. So you just have all these nuggets and facts in your head to use them throughout your show. But having been a fan of the team and then covered them intently, I sort of have an institutional knowledge about all things Patriots. So it comes easy to me. Whereas if I was working in a different market, I would probably have to work harder because I don't know. It's not that I don't know the history. I would do the homework, but I didn't live it. Like I've lived the entire Brady era, either as a fan or covering it. So, that reminds me of that game back in 2003 or 2004. I can say that because I remember it. And there's a lot of people in the Boston media who are from here. So a lot of people, I'm not unique in that. But I think you have to match the excitement of the moment. So when the Pats come back from 28-3, you better not be standing there, hey, great Super Bowl, Pats came back and won. But you can't be doing jumping jacks either. You got to be professional. But you just really have to match the excitement because first off, being a CBS and Fox affiliate, we had many of the Super Bowls. So the Seahawks was NBC, Falcons was Fox, Eagles, I think, was NBC, Rams was CBS. So we had 2 of the 4 that I covered. So in all cases, we're doing post-game show, but when it's on your air, the amount of viewers you're getting is so big because the Super Bowl has 10 times the viewership as like an NHL Stanley Cup Finals game or a World Series game. I mean, it's that big. Yeah. So I wouldn't say there's pressure. It's a good pressure, but like literally everyone's watching. Like I'm on the news every night. Once in a while, a buddy will text me or a family member, oh, good story, or I saw you this, or you screwed up, or you did this, that was good. The Super Bowl, like your phone's blowing up after, because like literally everyone's after a Super Bowl win is watching.
Yep.
So you just have to sort of rise to the occasion, so to speak. But you just have to be ready. Like I remember after the Eagles Super Bowl loss, like I was there with Ruthie Polinsky, who's now in Miami. Like the Malcolm Butler thing, no one knew what happened. Why didn't he play? So that was all of this while we're on the field post-game is going on in the post-game press conferences. So we're listening to it and we're checking Twitter and seeing what other people are saying, but like we're on live TV. So we're reacting to it in real time. And that's, if you recall, in the post-game, our producer goes, someone just said Gronk may retire. And at that point, there was no rumors or inklings of him wanting to retire. Sure enough, he's like, yeah, it's been a long road, rough year, injuries. So like, not only do the Patriots lose the Super Bowl, and they're like, what? Gronk may retire. So you just sort of have to be able to react. And if you've done your homework all year, in my case, covered the team and been a fan, then you sort of know all the stories.
Yeah. So we were just talking about all the Patriots Super Bowls. How about the Red Sox World Series you got to cover? Not that. Let's backtrack to 2004. I remember something. I don't remember the story. You gave me a story about the night of the 2004 when they won. It was either when they won the World Series or when they beat the Yankees in the CS. You got some kind of story about the 2004 Red Sox?
Well, so first in '03, I'm a freshman in college at Maryland. And it's Game 7, Red Sox, Yankees, Pedro versus Clemens, and Red Sox are up. They take out Pedro. They leave Pedro in Grady Little, who was then fired and replaced by Terry Francona. Left him in too long. Aaron Boone hits a home run. Yankees go on the World Series. So I was, college kid drinking a fair amount that night. So it was like, depressed and losing my mind in my dorm room. I don't even know if I had any other Red Sox. I might have cleared out all my roommates. Don't talk to me. '04 was nuts because you're down 3-0 and it's not like a football game where the comeback happens in an hour and a half, like in the Falcons game. It's like, all right, as Kevin Millar said, don't let us win one. So they win Game 4 and then Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7. So I remember I probably bought shots for 50 people in a bar when the Red Sox won the World Series that year. Absolutely lost, because at that point you have to remember 86 years, it was unimaginable that the Red Sox could ever win a World Series, and they've won 4 since. So '04, I would say the '01 Pats Super Bowl, beating the Rams, was the coolest fan experience because that was my first championship as a fan, right? I was in high school. My buddies and I watched every game that year. They were double-digit underdogs to the Rams. Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk win on a game-winning field goal. But the '04 Red Sox was the most important because they had been 86 years. So it was cool. And 13, they won it all at home at Fenway. And that's the first time they had won at home in 100 years. Mm-hmm. So that was wild. And then in 18, winning in LA at Dodger Stadium was awesome because Dodger Stadium is such a historic ballpark too. And if the deciding game's at Fenway, we have more resources, right? We have a truck there and we have a photog and we have probably 5-6 people. On the road, it was just JP and I. So literally our post-game show was just Ruthie and Maury were in set, and we had a former Red Sox player as an analyst, but we wanted it to originate from Dodger Stadium. That's where everything was happening. The Red Sox so I started the show in the infield, because we have a, TVU, a live view, a backpack, so we could be mobile. So I'm on the infield. I'm interviewing Xander Bogaerts, Andrew Benintendi, Jackie Bradley Jr., owner John Henry. And then, all right, let's go into the locker room. We're in the clubhouse. They're coming to me, live pictures, champagne spraying everywhere. So that was just a really cool, impromptu post-game show because, if it was at Fenway, it's a little bit smaller. We'd be on tripod. It'd be a little bit more buttoned up, but this was almost cooler because we were just roaming. All right, let's go to the clubhouse. Back to Yianni. I'm in the infield. I have a live guest. So that was a really cool experience too. Yeah. Baseball is cool. Much different. And this goes for hockey and basketball too, because it's a series. So it's there's so many ebbs and flows to the series and momentum changes. You remember in the 18 World Series, the Sox lost that 19-inning game. Mm-hmm. In LA in Game 3. So it was they're going to be demoralized, changing of momentum. And then they came back the next day and won. So whereas the Super Bowl, you talk about it for 2 weeks and then it happens and it's over. And, in hockey, it's the Bruins went to St. Louis and won Game 6 to force a Game 7 back at the Garden. So it's all right, they won on the road, back home, Game 7, home ice, they're going to win. Turns out they lost 4-1 to the Blues. So you never really know what's going to happen. But series are fun because you're sort of dodging back and forth between the two cities.
Okay, awesome. That's cool. And so I got one more for you before I have a real quick rapid fire thing at the end here. Okay. So you've covered Belichick for a while now. Take us into a typical press conference with Bill Belichick. I know last year was different because it was virtual, a little different. Is he really as bad as a lot of people play him out to be when he's talking to the media? Do you have any good impressions of him?
Well, he does his snorts and his he'll do a big stare down of you if he doesn't like the question. I mean, here's what I'll say about Bill Belichick. You have to come prepared. You have to know that he's going to shoot down any question about injuries or the future or the past. He is in the moment and focused on the next team. So while I'd love to, wax poetic about, do you remember in 03 and 04 in that Super Bowl run? He'll just tell you that has nothing to do with this year's team. If you ask about someone's injury, or if you ask about, so you, after covering him, you sort of know what he'll answer. But then again, if you ask a thoughtful football question, he'll give you a decent answer. So what I'll say about Belichick is he treats everyone equally. I've had an intern ask him a question in person, and he responded with a great answer. And then someone like Tom Curran or Mike Reese, who've covered him for 20 years, asks a question, and he'll shoot them down. Then the next day, he'll shoot the intern down and give a good answer to those guys. So it doesn't matter who you are. He treats everyone the same. He doesn't really play favorites. But you have to ask your question knowing sort of the parameters and ask it well. Because if you give him an out on the question or the ability to respond to you sort of with a rebuttal, then you'll get in trouble. If you ask a question and then he brings it back to you and you're not ready to do that tango, then that's when you look bad. Mm-hmm. But I have a former colleague who used to ask him like funny questions, and maybe 60-40 rate, he would actually give funny answers, or he would indulge it. If it was Christmas week, hey, I know you have a big game against the Jets, but what's on your Christmas list? Maybe he indulges. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy's a human being. But yeah, he's tough. He's tough. You have to bring your A game. He can be boring. He can, filibuster and go on and on for 4 minutes, but he makes you better, I think. So it's a cool experience, because I got into it with him the last game of last year, because Adam Schefter that morning said the Pats on ESPN, the Pats and Cam Newton expect to part ways. So that was sort of it didn't matter that the Pats beat the Jets week 17. They weren't making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I asked him, there was a report this morning that you and Cam Newton are parting ways. Is that the case? And he goes, oh, some anonymous report. So he then asked me. So it's like, I need to be ready for this, right? So I said, no, it's Adam Schefter. And everyone knows Adam Schefter. It's sort of understood that Belichick and Adam Schefter have a pretty good relationship, that they talk, that he gives Adam Schefter information. So I said, no, it was Adam Schefter. It wasn't some, kid in his mom's basement printing this out or blogging it. It was the most reputable NFL reporter. He goes, I don't think that's what Adam said. In reality, it's what Adam said on TV. So either that's not what you told Adam and you don't like how it came out, or did you actually watch ESPN Sports Center this morning, or you're mad that that's now out. So he goes, so we just had like a little bit, it wasn't like contentious per se. But sometimes like the radio guys in Boston were giving the media corps, all of us, heat last week, because it was branded as a pre-draft press conference, but no one asked Bill about re-signing Cam, which is fair criticism, right? Someone should have asked him. So sometimes, you have to rely on someone in the press corps to ask the tough question, even if no one wants to do it.
Gotcha. And that's why I actually saw you tweet, why are coaches and GMs doing draft pressers this close to Thursday? Because then that's when all this shit comes out. But
Kyle Shanahan looked like an idiot yesterday, because all these reports are coming out on a Monday, and then he has a press conference on a Monday. Whereas if you do your draft press conference a week or two ago, not as much stuff is floating out in the atmosphere, so you don't have to be asked about it. Like, didn't you think Shanahan looked terrible yesterday?
Yeah, that was, oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
So just
it's not a good look, but it's funny for us to see.
Yeah. But, yeah. He's like, listen, you're not guaranteed anything in life. We may not be here Sunday. I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be on my team. So,
yeah. All right, Yianni. Well, let's just wrap this up. I got a quick rapid fire for you.
All right.
Really out. A lot of people were talking after the departure of Julian Edelman retiring. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer in your eyes?
Man, I love the guy. One of the most clutch players in NFL history, second most receiving in catches and yards postseason history after Jerry Rice. I'm still going to say no. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the best of the best. And for right or wrong, mostly in baseball, but even the NFL, it's your body of work, and his numbers just don't stack up. And like in a baseball comp, Kurt Schilling has unbelievable playoff numbers, but he still did enough in the regular season. So I'd say no.
I'd have to agree with you there. All right. Favorite Boston sports athlete growing up?
Man, that's a good one. Because you say growing up, I mean, like I was in high school when Brady, I would say Nomar Garciaparra, shortstop. I loved as a Red Sox player. I loved Drew Bledsoe, who was the Pats quarterback for most of my youth prior to. And it's funny when you meet these guys. I've met Bledsoe. I didn't meet Nomar. I haven't met Mo Vaughn as an adult, who was a Red Sox player. I still haven't met Paul Pierce. But I'm more excited meeting Drew Bledsoe than I would Tom Brady, because like as a kid, those are the people you idolize. And now like Brady, I've covered more as a professional. So it's like Ruthie was making fun of me because Bledsoe was at a Celtics game and I interviewed him and I was like a 12-year-old kid again. She's like, what's with this dorky smile? I'm like, oh, that was my guy. I love Drew Bledsoe. So yeah, I'll say Nomar, Bledsoe. Into my teen years, Brady, Paul Pierce, and then Pedro, Manny. But when you say kid, I think like, I'm a 10, 11-year-old, probably Nomar and Drew Bledsoe.
Okay. Perfect. Favorite sport to sit back and drink a beer to? You're not covering it. You got the night off. You're sitting back. What are you drinking a beer to and just chilling?
Football. It's the best. Action-packed. Can't miss a play. Baseball, I like baseball, but it's at the end of the day, it's boring unless it's a playoff game. I like basketball and hockey, but I would still say football.
All right. Most embarrassing moment as a TV personality, whether it's on air or whatever.
Good question, man. Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had anything like bad, like swear or curse or anything like that. Embarrassing. That's a good one. Oh, these things happen a lot where like technology sort of screws you over, right? So it's like they come to you and they don't have you, like the signal is bad. So I'm like, oh, I'm here. I remember this happened at Fenway Park. I'm like, I'm here, blah, 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 Red Sox winning, da, da, da. And they're like, we don't have you. And then it actually comes to me and I'm like, what happened? And then it's like, you're on the air. And one time I just go, all right, I'm on the air. Like and then I'm like trying to make excuses. I go, I'm trying to be on air. I'm trying to watch the game. We have the signal. We don't have the signal. And then I actually go into my report, but I'm sort of excusing why I'm like visibly pissed off on TV.
Got to cover your tracks. Yeah.
But nothing too bad. I'm sure if I go back to my first market, I remember there was a time where, after doing this so long, you just get better and get used to it. But like my first station, like we did sports at the green screen and I had to finish at the desk, and I was like prompter robot. Like I read the prompter and I didn't have the right script and I didn't know the game well enough for the players. And I was trying to ad lib and I was just mumbling and stumbling. And then I remember I was so red in the face, and just like those first job experiences that are good to have because you get them out of your system. Whereas now, the rule is if you're reading the prompter, have your script ready in case the prompter goes down or you don't have prompter. But generally, if I'm doing highlight of a game, I know who the players are, so I can ad lib it. In this case, I was just a complete disaster. So those things happen.
Well, good to see you came a long way. Yeah. All right, last one. Best part about being a father.
Oh man, that's a good one. I would say just creating memories. Like we just went on a great vacation last week. And now with social media and stuff, it's like, when you get those memories that pop up on your phone from Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and just sort of reliving those. But yeah, I would say the holidays, the birthdays, all those things. But I mean, the last year, while the COVID was tough, it was cool to spend so much time with your family. I mean, we wanted to kill each other at points, but it was good bonding time too. So the kids are growing up. My daughter's 7 next week. My son's 4.5. So it's flying by. But just like a vacation like last week, creating memories like that where the kids don't forget it. And then, hey, can we go there again? Do you remember when we did this? Those are the best times.
It's good. Good stuff. Well, that's it, Yianni. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate being your inaugural guest. It's an honor.
Yeah, I had to bring you on for the first one. Well, I really appreciate it. Pleasure as always.
Thank you, buddy. Good luck the rest of the way. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you. All right, guys, that's it. Yianni Kourakis. This is Cole's Corner.
Yeah.